Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dave Weisberger, the CEO of CoinRoutes. It's time for our This Week in Crypto Roundup for July 28th, 2023. Now, this week we haven't had a lot of news. I'm going to focus exclusively almost on what's going on in Congress because that has been quite interesting. The markets, however, are kind of stuck in a holding pattern. If you look at Bitcoin, it's down a little less than 2%. All the action, in fact, all of it was all in a very quick period earlier in the week. Ether's down less than 1%. You got a little bit of movement in that XRP is down 9%. That's really just settling in and congesting its gains from earlier on their decision from a couple weeks ago. You do see a little bit of a bump in Dogecoin up 5%, probably because of the rebranding of Twitter to X and the theory that Elon Musk is promulgating that he's going to be the do everything financial app, and people hoping that Doge will have a part of that. But other than that, all eyes in the market are really looking at what's going on in the U.S. Congress because there's been remarkable movement. It was summarized really well by the Blockchain Association, and they basically talked about four things, and I'm going to go to a little bit of depth on each. The first is the Stablecoin Bill. The second is the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. The third is the FIT Act, which is the big market structure bill. And the fourth is the Keep Your Coins Act that Warren Davidson pointed through. All of that in the same week getting moved to the House floor. Whether or not anything happens, it's more movement that we've seen in the legislative side in crypto in quite some time. And that's important. But I'd like to highlight two other things that happened this week that were interesting. So as some of you know, I participate fairly frequently in the Crypto Town Hall, hosted by my friend Scott Melker, by Mario Nowal and Rand Munier. I think I'm pronouncing it right. And it's had a very wide following, and they've had some great guests. They had two guests this week that are particularly interesting. The first was RFK Jr. And RFK Jr., over the course of a lengthy, well-reasoned, quite frankly, enlightening interview, talked about a lot of things. Specifically, the tagline is Bitcoin equals economic freedom. And he talked about how he bought a couple Bitcoin for his grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. It is really interesting and important because while we've had posturing before by politicians, here we have someone with 20% of the polling at 20%, which obviously is not enough to win in the Democratic nomination, talking about Bitcoin as a store of value in a very important way. And we've talked in past weeks about the Bitcoin as a store of value narrative and why that matters for many investors. But that was newsworthy. And quite frankly, much of what he said was newsworthy. I would advise everybody to go back and give it a re-listen. It's posted, and it was a fascinating interview. And then today, the Crypto Town Hall hosted Representative Ritchie Torres of the Bronx. Now, no one is going to confuse Ritchie Torres with a conservative. Very much not so. But Mr. Torres is extremely erudite and clear about how he thinks crypto can enhance the progressive vision. Now, regardless of one's politics, and I tried very hard not to talk about politics, the fact of the matter is there are certain things about crypto that really are progressive and is why it should be bipartisan. In addition to libertarian values such as economic freedom, it also is a more inclusive ecosystem. It also reduces barriers to people who are less than wealthy for saving, investing, transferring money, decreasing costs, etc. And Mr. Torres, Representative Torres, absolutely understands this and made it very clear. He also said something which should be a rallying cry for all Americans of both parties, which is that crypto technology is potentially part of the next big disruptive change in technology to sweep all markets, basically. And having America being a laggard in that financial technology goes against everything that has helped make this country great. We have been at the forefront of innovation. And as he puts it, we want to lead from ahead, not try to catch up from behind. And so it was a really interesting interview, and hopefully he will be able to persuade more of his fellow Democrats to go along with the legislation we're about to talk about. Now, as it happens, he's persuaded, or at least 5 others on the committee, on the finance committee, voted with him. And so that in and of itself is interesting. But let's talk about all 4 of the acts that went forward, because there's interesting parts about all of them. And I'm going to try to keep it shorter than usual this week because we've been going on too long. The first one is the Stablecoin Act. Now, this is one that is close to uncontroversial. Yes, there will be details that will be controversy, such as in the Senate bill that the Linus Gillibrand put forward. They said you had to be a bank. Okay, we could argue about that. But what is not arguable, what almost everybody agrees, is that stablecoins, to be called a stablecoin, needs to be fully backed, be auditable, and have its reserves be well understood and transparent. No one argues that. And no one argues the fact that not having that kind of regulation is bad and allows for things like the UST stablecoin that went kaput off of Luna to masquerade to investors like they truly are stablecoins. But yet, at the 11th hour, the White House evidently objected, and the ranking member, Maxine Waters, pulled her votes in support of the stablecoin bill because of the White House administration. Now, we don't know who in the administration said anything. We're not 100% sure. It's not clear. My personal guess is it's mid-level staffers who don't really understand economics that kind of, say, well, this is bad because my friends in a bank will donate less money if, in fact, we don't keep them in power. But who knows what actually happened? But it still shows that we have a long way to go. And I think that's one of the reasons why, despite the groundbreaking nature of 4 crypto bills being sent to the full House in the same day, we haven't seen any movement in the crypto markets. I think it's because of this. I think people still realize that this administration has power and still is fighting a rearguard action against crypto. So that's interesting. The second bill that we've talked about exhaustively last week is the FIT Act. Now, the FIT Act is basically a full market structure bill to effectively enshrine regulation by enforcement as a verboten, circle with a big slash through it, where certainty of rules makes sense. And Congressman Torres, he was funny. He basically said the SEC is essentially enforcing speed limit rules on drivers without telling them what the speed limit is. So effectively, if you do that, everyone's forced to drive really slow. In fact, when asked why the SEC is doing it, Congressman Torres basically said, well, in his opinion, it's because they want to basically stop the crypto industry in the United States, which would be very bad, as we've talked about, as the world's financial system is inevitably going to go digital. To take our system, which is analog, and assume it can compete is wrong. Now, to put this in perspective, here's an interesting fun fact for everybody. We did an analysis of the last quarter's spot trading by CoinRoutes clients using our vanilla, i.e. our smart post algorithm, but vanilla, not with constraints that would have reduced its effectiveness or potentially had the views of traders, very important in the algorithm. And what we saw was fascinating. Basically, if you compare orders of over $200,000 going through CoinRoutes to orders of the same size being done in U.S. equities and other European equity markets, what you see is that in the U.S. equity markets, according to the Tab Group, for under 5% of ADV trades, average daily volume trades, you see over 11 basis points of slippage to the midpoint. Yet, if you look at the midpoint instantaneously of the crypto markets, for CoinRoutes customers trading in spot crypto, and this is for well over $4 billion and over 2,500 orders of institutional size last quarter, you saw slippage of basically 7 basis points. In other words, people trading crypto in the United States, or not in the United States, but compared to trading U.S. equities, actually had less slippage. Full stop. That's despite the fact that the analog markets in the US are considered to be the best. And that's a very important stat. That is only going to become a wider and wider difference over time as markets mature. So Congressman Torres is right. And the FIT Act is important, but this is a long story. But there are 2 other bills that are worthy of mention. The first one is the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. And basically what this does is short circuit attempts to cut the crypto market by attacking non-financial intermediaries such as miners. In fact, there was arguments, and there has been over the years, that miners should be called brokers and mining or proof of work should be kneecapped by making them file financial disclosures, even though they really have no financial or fiduciary interest in any of the transactions. They're simply validators. This act basically says, no, you can't do that. It creates certainty for those types of intermediaries, and that's a really good thing. The last act is equally important. It is the Keep Your Coins Act from Warren Davidson. Now, what this is doing is saying it is preserving and enshrining as a right to be able to self-custody one's own assets. Now, clearly, this is America. People, if you want to hold cash in your house, bury it in your backyard, stuff it in a mattress. You should be allowed to do so. We have had this as a right for years, but with crypto, it's under assault. The idea is that you should be able to regulate people's wallets or make it impossible for people to self-custody. And in fact, the ability to trade in a venue and be able to take it off a venue and self-custody it is fundamental to crypto. It gives people that self-sovereignty and control. So this act, which should be pretty clear and shouldn't be bipartisan either, was also put to the full House. And we'll see how it does. But it is really important if one thinks about why crypto is potentially innovative. So I'm going to stop here this week. I think that we have to adopt a wait and see attitude, just like the market does on all of these acts. So enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay safe out there, everybody.